All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our session, PowerConnect for Dynatrace, transforming SAP telemetry into AI-driven observability. We're thrilled to have you here and excited to dive into a topic that's transforming how organizations understand and manage their SAP environments. My name is Sarah Ernst, and I'm with RHONDOS, proud global partners of Dynatrace, the leader in AI-powered observability. Together, we're helping organizations gain deep, actionable insights into their SAP systems by delivering true end-to-end visibility, something that's been very difficult, if not impossible, till now. Dynatrace helps you analyze, automate, and innovate faster, transforming complexity into your greatest asset. With PowerConnect for Dynatrace, we're extending that intelligence and automation to the heart of your SAP enterprise. Today, you'll hear from experts who will walk you through how this integration works, why it matters, and how customers are already using it to secure, monitor, and optimize their SAP landscapes with precision. So once again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. Before we dive in, I'd love to introduce today's speakers. First up is Ben Dare, our technical sales engineer. Ben has over 25 years of hands-on SAP experience. He's truly been through the trenches. He knows the challenges that SAP teams face, and he's now using that experience to help customers harness the power of observability to transform their SAP operations. Joining Ben is Taylor Williams, a principal solutions engineer with Dynatrace and has been working and consulting in observability solutions for nearly 15 years. Taylor first got introduced to PowerConnect about 5 years ago, and today is helping numerous organizations and large enterprises realize the value in observing their SAP applications within Dynatrace. You're in great hands with these two, so let's just jump in.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. We're going to keep things very casual today. We're doing this kind of podcast style. One thing I just want to say before we start, and I know Taylor's going to cover this whole slide about the benefits of using Dynatrace for overall observability. But since we started this discussion, Taylor's been promoted. So Sarah mentioned that he's a principal now, and I think the previous slide said lead. So congratulations, Taylor.
Thank you very much. Like you said, very, very recent. That's actually a week ago. Start of our fiscal year a week ago. So still fresh.
All right. So tell us, Taylor, how does
Sure.
Dynatrace help customers? How do we get this data in?
Yeah.
What's the power of this thing?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like Ben said, we're going to keep this pretty casual today. When we first kind of started talking about hosting this webinar, my initial gut was to say, let's get into the nitty gritty and force you all to have a serious tough pop quiz towards the end and make sure everyone understands the technology. I kid, I joke, but at the same time, I want to obviously make sure everyone understands the concepts of the Dynatrace platform as it really relates to translating into monitoring your SAP applications and observing SAP and the benefit of observing your SAP applications, leveraging the Dynatrace framework. Sarah, if it's all right with you, I'm actually just going to steal the screen right now. I'll pull this graphic up on my side so we can go through a couple of quick demonstration
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
here. Send the request to you. Let Zoom do its thing.
Should be good
And
now.
perfect. And before I keep going, make sure you guys can see basically the same graphic, but just now on my screen.
We got you, bud.
Awesome, cool. So I'm sure plenty of you that are joining here, right, have either seen Dynatrace recently or in the past. And especially for those that either haven't seen it or those that might not have seen it for a little while, next few minutes here are going to be pretty beneficial for you to understand at a really high level what the new generation of Dynatrace looks like, especially as it relates to the broad term of observability, right? We've heard observability in the industry now for a couple of decades, right? It has changed, it has evolved, and it means different things to different people. But when you think of maybe traditional observability, your mind tends to go towards or more traditional APM solutions, more traditional metrics and logging based tools that do give you valuable insights, right, into things like the performance of applications and request and response time, throughput, metric examples, and all these kind of things that matter for the overall health of an application. But when it comes to, you know, 21st century observability, especially in 2026, in the way that Dynatrace is approaching it, it is much, much more, right? The Dynatrace solution today is much more of a platform, kind of like the way you see it in this image, right? So when we look at the overall approach for collection and observing data within Dynatrace, it's far more than just, say, traditional APM, just traditional real user monitoring, just traditional log monitoring. And while all of those are still critical foundations to observability, observability within Dynatrace, again, stretches much further, much wider, and it still works in the sense of all of it being deterministic AI, causal AI, and automatic impact and root cause analysis of problems done within the platform for you out of the box, so that you don't, as a human, have to try and make sense of potentially billions of signals per day, and just get down to running your applications, running your solutions, automating maybe some workflows within the data, and increasing uptime, increasing availability, whatever it may be. So when we look at Dynatrace, I like to have people focus more on not just traditional APM, but the platform for observability in Dynatrace is a method of producers and consumers. Producers today in Dynatrace, because we're a platform, is virtually any data source. Of course, on the top, you have the traditional observability sources like traces, metrics, and logs. That will always be the case. That will always be the foundation. And quite a lot of what we are going to be doing and showing today with the PowerConnect integration for SAP applications in Dynatrace leverage a lot of these data sets. But the observability platform that is Dynatrace stretches much further, right? Effectively, any type of data can be ingested into Dynatrace via a myriad of different collection mechanisms, right? Leveraging everything from our out-of-the-box and native agent called our One Agent, through an open API or through open telemetry, all stored within a unified backend. That's a critical component to the new Dynatrace over a couple of years ago, where we introduced this new backend called Grail that is what we call our unified data lakehouse, that takes all this producer data set, unifies it, adds contextualization to it, and allows us to consume and auto-analyze that data effectively out of the box. So as we bring in any of this data, the next layer of analysis is a lot of automation. So the context of the data, the traces, metrics, logs, topology data, behavior, business events, whatever we're bringing into the platform has an understanding of where it lives in my environment, what it's related to vertically and horizontally, and we're able to auto baseline the performance of anything that comes into the platform, whether that's a traditional Apache or Nginx web app, or something as complicated as 15 different applications running in SAP, or anything in between. All of that data, all that production data on the left brought into the platform gets auto-analyzed, auto-mapped, auto-contextualized, and then our Dynatrace intelligence engine, our causal AI and agentic ecosystem, detects problems and events within our ecosystem automatically and gives us full fidelity fault domain root cause and impact analysis out of the box. And I'll show you an example of that. Again, those that have been familiar with Dynatrace before, you may have seen Dynatrace Davis. In the past, the Dynatrace intelligence name is a new AI mechanism. It's a full switch into the agentic ecosystem that dramatically enhances the capabilities of the legacy Davis, but we're still doing problem detection with root cause in a very similar way we did beforehand, with a few other capabilities that we're going to show here today.
Hey,
and
Taylor,
then finally, yes, sir.
Sorry, real quick. Don't mean to interrupt.
Of course. No.
This may seem obvious, but what's the benefit of that auto baseline that we're doing with all that data that's coming in?
Yeah, I kind of hinted at that a second ago, right? When you're looking at the number of producers in any modern network, you're talking about tens to hundreds of thousands of individual devices, billions, if not trillions, of service calls per day, maybe millions or billions of different metrics that are being ingested into a platform. It is more than just unreasonable to think a human or even a collection of humans can build baselining rules for that kind of number of just general entities within your ecosystem today. Having that auto baselining and the platform doing what it does, especially in this analyze column, takes all of that work out of the human hands. And as you add more producers to the environment, or you update your apps, or maybe you're moving to the cloud, or maybe you're moving into containerized ecosystems, you don't have to recreate baselines for new systems or new architectures. It's done for you automatically. Yeah, I mean, that's at a high level, you're taking that need out of the human hand at the scale that is the modern network.
That's awesome. I see Kevin asked a question about the benefits of like how this works in terms of SAP, and we're going to get to that. I just want to make sure that people get a baseline understanding of Dynatrace platform, because traditionally we use SAP monitoring tools, things like Solution Manager, Cloud ALM. And so we just want to make sure that people have a baseline understanding of the benefits of sending all of this data to Dynatrace before I jump in and start showing you what SAP data looks like inside the platform and the things that you can do with it. So
Exactly.
Thanks for that question.
And we're going to like Ben said, take what we're talking about here for the next 7 to 10 more minutes, a couple of different examples, and the foundation of what Dynatrace is. And this is just going to be extrapolated into the SAP data. So the way that Dynatrace works with maybe an NGINX app versus an SAP application is fundamentally the same with the Dynatrace platform. So that's why we're starting the way we are here, to give a quick little overview of the Dynatrace platform. So I'll show, like I said, a couple of quick demonstrations or items that put this in action, right? So when we start bringing data into Dynatrace, things like Dynatrace Intelligence and Smartscape are automatically working at all times when the data is collected. So when we bring data into Dynatrace, automatic vertical, horizontal, contextual dependency mapping and topology is done for us by default. So I took a little dive here into what's called our Smartscape. Our Smartscape is effectively our entity model that shows the relationships between all of our services, between our hosts, between services running on hosts, between applications that might be communicating with other services and processes. Effectively, any vertical component within Dynatrace, as well as its horizontal relationships, are understood in all-time, real-time, as well as a historical sense. So if I look at, I'm just doing a little snippet of all my services here, right? When we're analyzing, again, potentially billions of entities within a single environment, a full-on service map can get a little bit convoluted. We're not always going to be looking at the Smartscape itself, but it is a good way to understand how data is working live and in action. So in this environment, I can see I have, say, this front-end service that is supporting a myriad of different components, right, analyzed by those horizontal connections with other services. But if I wanted to understand the topology of any component as well, this is also happening at all times for every entity we're bringing in. So this front-end service is hosted in a variety of different K8s nodes that are inside of AKS, inside of a front-end container, right? So we understand the full topology of every system that is running within Dynatrace and providing and sending information to us. I show this real quick because when it comes to the next part of Dynatrace, and what I would argue is like the main value and reason people use Dynatrace, is because this topology is understood at all times. We understand baselines and normal behaviors for every metric when it comes to the container utilization, the node utilization, the service utilization, service call utilization between individual components. We're able to auto-detect issues within the environment and provide immediate root cause and impact analysis and kick off automations within the platform as it relates to whatever type of problem that we're looking at. So a problem card within Dynatrace is far more than just a single event or a single incident that you would otherwise have an alert storm on, right, in other production systems. You can see right out of the gate, Dynatrace itself, like the intelligence AI, took over 200 events, unique individual events that a legacy observability platform would potentially alert on individually, and understood the relationship between all of these events when it comes to that Smartscape and that service flow for a problem, and built us an entire sequence of events and a story, as opposed to an individual event, a full problem story over the course of, in this case, this was a bad problem in our environment that lasted for over 5 days, that had a variety of different components that were impacted. And we can see a version of that Smartscape related specifically to the entities that were affected during this problem. And we can see the unique number and time series of those events as it related to the impacted entities, again, with the root cause of this problem identified for us. So again, we can see the full impact when it comes to all of the applications and the user sessions that were actually impacted. So if there's a problem that had real users impacted by this particular outage in this case, we can see the actual users that were impacted and analyze their sessions, because we're collecting real user monitoring data that is linked to all of the backend data that we're also tracing, and have that full impact analysis done from the user side, but also from all the technical entity sides as well.
This is one area that I love, and again, I'm going to interrupt you, Taylor. I'm sorry if I'm
No,
messing up
you're
your
fine.
flow here.
No,
But
you're good.
just for those SAP folks that are attending this, I was certified in EDE 100 and 300 for Solution Manager, which are root cause analysis and business process monitoring. Every one of those 225 events, if you're using traditional SAP monitoring, is essentially a KPI breach. So those are all different alerts that are going to be coming in. And what Dynatrace is doing is consolidating all of those different KPI metric breaches that have occurred and consolidating into one problem where, as Taylor mentioned, is giving you the root cause and showing you the complete impact of this. So if you think about this in an SAP perspective, you're sending all of these logs, metrics, and traces from not just SAP, but third-party systems that are connected to it. This will easily show you where a problem exists.
You got it. And that's the idea, right? Of regardless of what you're monitoring in Dynatrace, getting to root cause and reducing MTTR is the name of the game for any organization, right? Regardless of the application. Increasing uptime, increasing availability, and decreasing MTTR, that last one especially, being critical to have auto impact analysis and root cause done for us. Of course, and this is, the vision of Dynatrace is a world where software works perfectly. Understood, there's still going to be outages, right? So we can help increase availability and increase uptime, but we can certainly always help decrease MTTR with everything that we're monitoring, because this root cause is done for us. Moving on a little bit further, and then we'll kick it over to the SAP side here in a second. When we get into some of the more, let's call it maturity curve use cases within Dynatrace, not to say you couldn't do it right out of the box. This idea of the automation engine in Dynatrace lets us start to close the loop when it comes to problem detection. So depending on what, let's say, runbook operations may exist within an organization, a certain type of incident or problem is likely going to have a mechanism to be resolved within the organization. And that can mean a multitude of different things for different companies, depending on the technology, depending on their processes, you name it, right? Dynatrace's automation engine and the workflow application within Dynatrace lets us begin to automate and do full loop closure on problems as they're detected, or potentially perform some auto scaling or canary deployments, or anything you can honestly think of when it comes to an automation as a result of a problem being detected can start to be kicked off by Dynatrace via our workflow engine. And what you're seeing here on the bottom right of this particular problem card is we have a few workflows in this environment that are developed that are kicked off by certain types of events. In the problem card, we can see which automations were kicked off. So I don't have to go into a separate app and see if something was ultimately fired as a result of a problem card. No, the linkage of that automation and remediation engine is done right here in the problem card. So if you have set up automations, you will see that within the platform itself too.
Taylor, let me ask you a question. A lot of times in SAP, we're notified of alerts via email. Could these automation methods be used to trigger an ITSM ticket?
Oh, yeah. So that's probably what I would say the simplest thing. The automations are, how do I want to say this? They can be much more complex than that. But this idea of notifying a third-party ITSM is actually just native into Dynatrace problem notifications, right? So based off of certain rules with the notification engine, it's a little bit simpler than the automation engine itself, where we can just basically say, problems with this category go to this ServiceNow endpoint or this email or what have you. The remediations and the automations can certainly do that, but they go much further, right, than just say notification or adding a new Slack channel or adding a Teams channel or something like that. Is that possible? Absolutely. But the automation engine has a lot more capabilities than say just notifying.
That's fantastic. So we're reducing alert noise and creating alerts that are actually meaningful and can be tracked versus just an email inbox that gets flooded with alerts.
Correct, correct. I use the example of a workflow with, say, running a canary deployment. That's actually a real life use case with one of my customers. Is we have various different rules that basically trigger for certain clusters in one of their production environments, certain Kubernetes clusters and EKS specifically, that will effectively test for load, right, on the cluster. They run it in the most optimized state for what we'll call cost consumption. But there are, of course, times where that cluster becomes overloaded, or let's just say overloaded, or there are unexpected service spikes, or they go run through what they call, I'm not going to use their terminology, but they do release some products throughout the year that does increase service load. So they actually use Dynatrace workflows when a specific type of problem for service load itself to that cluster is detected. They can actually have the workflow kick off a canary deployment and spin up a set of traffic to 25, 75, or 50 and 75% of full load, and then release new nodes into that cluster to handle the anticipated workload over time. So the workflow engine, again, much more than just say notifications. In the case of actually being connected with AWS EKS in this customer's example, they use it for auto scaling, right? As service load is detected within Dynatrace, they scale it to the appropriate load dynamically, depending on the service load increase that they're seeing at any given point in time, because it's not uniform throughout the year, but they do have a mechanism to scale it appropriately, leveraging Dynatrace based off of the throughput that it actually sees on our side.
That's awesome. So especially like for SAP during periods of like month-end close, for example, when workload becomes very heavy on the system, we can spin up app servers for month-end close to run on those boxes.
Mm-hmm. No, you got it.
Yep.
You got it. It's a great use case for it. So with that, actually, I think it's time for me to kick it over to you, Ben, right? This is a couple of quick screens of Dynatrace, right? There's any number of ways to query all of the data and work with a lot of customized use cases, analyze KPIs, perform automations. But I wanted to spend, the first 15 minutes or so going over really the core concept of Dynatrace and how it applies to effectively everything. And that includes the data that we collect from SAP via PowerConnect as well.
Thank you, sir.
You got it. I'll stop sharing my screen as we kind of flip over.
Yeah.
I'll hit you with a question, right? Seeing what we just saw, right? And your understanding of the core platform of Dynatrace. Obviously, a lot of people today have other ways that they monitor different applications within SAP, but why is observability of SAP applications still such a challenge, right? What really hammers the engineers, if you will, or the SREs in SAP when it comes to observability? Why is it still such a challenge?
Yeah, no, great question. So honestly, like I said, I was a hands-on keyboard basis admin for 20 years. So the biggest problem are those war rooms, right? There's a Sev 1 or something that's been triggered, and we're essentially stuck on a Sev 1 bridge call until the issue's resolved. And the traditional problem is that everybody's still in their silos, right? And so Dynatrace has relieved a lot of that because you guys are sending logs, metrics, and traces from all of these different sources into a single pane of glass. But SAP's always been a black box. SAP folks are still looking at Cloud ALM. They're still looking at Solution Manager to be able to say, hey, my system's good. It's not my problem. But that's the issue in itself, right? There's still these silos that exist. And then SAP communicates with these third-party systems. And so there can still be finger pointing as to where the issues reside. And so, obviously the benefit of this solution is that we're sending all of the data, including SAP, to that single pane of glass with all of these amazing tool sets available to us in Dynatrace to, like you said, reduce that MTTR, which is money in customers' pockets. So
sure. Is the unification, for lack of a better term, or the unified observability, the main thing that you see SAP teams are missing when they're using the silo tools or even the native tools for monitoring SAP?
I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. So for me, again, I called out the fact that, those events that are all consolidated into a single problem record
Hmm.
is another huge factor when it comes to monitoring SAP. The standard tools that SAP provides can be very noisy. Like I said, you're very limited, bound by the CCMS architecture for generating alerts inside of SAP.
Hmm.
And one example I love to talk about with customers are things like background jobs, because different companies have functional jobs that run, say, every 5 minutes, but they're only expected to complete once in an hour. And so if that's a job and you're an audited company that's been deemed critical by the business, audit says you have to receive an alert every time that job fails. Well, that means you're now receiving 19 false alerts that you're expecting, right? All flooded into
Yep.
that inbox that nobody's paying attention to. By sending that data to Dynatrace, it's a intelligent query where we're saying, has this job completed in a 1 hour window? If it has, put a green light on a customized dashboard. And then if not, let's raise that ITSM ticket. So we're getting proper eyes on it. Auditors are happy because they can see that we've taken some action that somebody is forced to follow up on and can't just say, well, I missed the email because it went to that email with 5,000 unreads.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right, I'll let you do your thing. Sorry, I wanted
Yeah,
to prompt you
no,
with a
I
couple.
appreciate it. So the way PowerConnect works is we are a certified SAP add-on. So this is the SAP Certified Solution Store. You can see all of our certifications here. We do have customers that are running in SAP data centers like RISE and SAP NS2. And so, as I said, the first step is installing PowerConnect directly into SAP, where we have over 300 out-of-the-box extractors that are collecting data across application data, performance metrics, security. 50% of our customers come to us because they're looking to improve their audits. And then, of course, business process monitoring. Because PowerConnect is a fully extensible platform, we have the ability to pull data from any table inside of SAP. We can write direct SQL queries against the database, all to extract this full fidelity timestamp data and send it to Dynatrace. The second part of the solution is our app that we provide that gives you all of these out-of-the-box dashboards. So anything that you can imagine that you would want to monitor, whether that be interface monitoring, HANA database dashboards, business process monitoring, all of that is delivered in the platform to give you a deeper view into your SAP landscape. And then since we're sending all of this data there, we can also correlate those events with other infrastructure metrics that are already being collected by native Dynatrace tools to give that single pane of glass for people to see all of the things that are tied to their SAP landscape. So many hybrid SAP landscapes nowadays are relying on SAP SaaS applications, API for data integration, Salesforce for receiving orders, or Vertex for tax calculations. We want to know what the performance of those applications are. And then there's still on-prem applications that are relevant. So we've got VPN links that are going to our primary and our DR sites. Perhaps customers are using LDAP for SAP authentication, so making sure that it's working. I've seen several times where printers can cause a SEB1 in SAP if a bill of lading can't be printed and a truck can't leave a dock. So monitoring our printers to make sure that they're up and available. But then we can also create, a single pane of glass to pull application server metrics, key KPIs, things for the database, and then also the OS all in one place. And then, as Taylor mentioned, right, we've got all these amazing tools inside of Dynatrace where we can further investigate to find out what's going on inside of SAP. So Taylor mentioned Smartscape, which will show all of the interconnected services and applications that are reliant on our SAP landscape. So we can come into Smartscape and it will automatically build these service maps because we are ingesting, I apologize, I went to the wrong one. We are ingesting, we take basically SAP STAD records, which are a record of everything that happens in SAP, whether that be a web service call, an RFC call, etc. And we are sending that data to Dynatrace. So what that builds for us are these service maps that show us our entire SAP landscape. And I keep pulling up the wrong one. This is the one I wanted. I apologize. So all of our SAP services can be visible. So we can see things like our STAD traces, dispatcher logs, And again, this is a demo environment, so we don't have third-party interconnected systems. But if there were latency going to, MuleSoft or Salesforce or whatever it may be, that would show up here as that red icon, and we could see a problem record. Speaking of problem records, yes, we also have those for SAP. So that trying to figure out what the root cause immediately, we have all of that here. So like here's one for the HANA database. And we can see that there was an alert that triggered, but then we can also use the intelligence from Dynatrace to try to figure out what a possible solution for those errors are. So it will tell us what happened and then also provide us actionable steps to remedy the problem. So if you aren't familiar with, how to diagnose these things on your own going through Dynatrace, this kind of helps reduce the learning curve and gives you ideas of things that you can do to fix the problem immediately.
Thanks for bringing this one up, Ben. I neglected to actually click that button on my side, right, as we were showing the problem card. That is a major benefit for, frankly, every customer that we work with, right, on the Dynatrace side. This is actually, a good example where the problem card that Ben is showing is related to one entity and one event. That certainly can't happen if it's an infrastructure-related problem. But you're still going to have the answer here of what you need to do to remediate that database in this case, right? By going and using Dynatrace intelligence to explain this issue, you can quickly get through even an infrastructure related problem. The same thing is true on the reverse. And this is where, we see customers in production environments where you're looking at hundreds, if not thousands of events and potentially dozens or hundreds of impacted entities. On the flip side, you have a lot of data and root cause provided to you, but the problem itself can be so vast and complex that explain that problem becomes extremely handy to quickly summarize a very complex problem for you as well. And one more little anecdote on it. Sorry, Ben, I'm taking a little bit from you here, but on that data that is presented and explain this problem is actually available through third-party integrations as well. An example of that, we have a very tight integration today with ServiceNow that basically when we are integrated, the incidents and the CMDB are effectively connected via our service graph connector. In ServiceNow, we create an incident, but we also create remediation tasks automatically based off of what intelligence says to do as remediation tasks in the problem. So we're removing questions from the incident responders of what they need to do to actually fix a problem that fires off. We're providing that task automatically inside of the incidents in ServiceNow as it's been funneled into the problem card itself.
That's amazing.
All right, sorry, took you off your horse there.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to make sure I showed this as well again. So, like I said, we're sending all of the stats records from SAP to Dynatrace in the form of traces. And so you'll see here all the different services. So if we have a problem with an RFC call or an HTTP interface, we can troubleshoot and view all of those here. But there's also that scenario where we have the inevitable background job that's been running forever and we're not sure if it's actually doing anything. We have the ability to come into Dynatrace and I'm just going to sort this by duration, find a longer running one. Here's one that's been running for 6 minutes. And what this will give us is actually a waterfall report of all of the steps that have been taking place. And so we can actually see A, if it's doing anything, but then B, where the problem actually might exist. So again, helping to reduce that MTTR for even for background jobs, making sure that they're actually doing something. What else did I want to show?
Ben, real quick, we got I would say a good question here from Doug, if it makes sense to answer real fast.
Sure.
Can we also gather traces and logs from table Z, custom table, right, using PowerConnect?
Great question, Doug. Let me actually, I will show you how we do that. So the answer to that is yes. So as I mentioned, this is a fully extensible platform, and we are doing this podcast style. So I don't mind logging in here, kind of going off the cuff while we're on the call. So when you install PowerConnect, you get a new transaction and I should mention while I'm pulling this up that it has its own namespace, no Z program, so you can go ahead and um, update SAP without affecting PowerConnect and vice versa. But this is our table extractor. So we can literally extract any table. You would just need to plug in the name of your Z table here, and it would pull all of that data in. So one example, since we're here, that I'll give, I had a customer that wanted to be able to see sales order data inside of Dynatrace. So I pulled the VBAC table. Another customer that I was working with they had a business metric that they were trying to measure against, which was generating a specific number of work orders per hour. So we started by pulling the entire AUFK table. But what they told us was, A, this is increasing our ingest into Dynatrace, increasing our costs. And two, we really don't need all of that data because now we're having to write the queries to sort this data out once the data hits the platform. So in that case, we utilized our SQL filter, where again, we have the ability to write direct SQL queries against the database. And for that same AUFK table, we just wrote a SQL query that said, hey, give me the number of work orders, sort it by plant, and then send that summary data to Dynatrace. So the people that cared about that data could present that on their own customized dashboard. And then, of course, using all of the intelligence inside the Dynatrace platform, detect anomalies and automatically send alerts. So no longer having to set static thresholds for things. All right. Oh, something else I wanted to show you guys. So business process monitoring. This is going to be inside of here. What we can do inside of Dynatrace is create something called a business flow. So for things like order to cash, where there are several steps involved, it may take several individuals to perform these steps. They're done over different periods of time. We can map out, and again, this is a demo system. We don't actually have active orders in here, so there isn't any data, but this gives you a good idea of the things that are possible. So from the creation of the order, creation of the delivery, picking, packing, shipping, issuing invoices, billing those, and making sure that billing is completed, we can map that entire process and then also alert the business if there's delays in any of these things. So being able to track whether orders are delivered on time, seeing the financial impact of the process. So sorry, I've got two different systems up, folks. I apologize. I'm going to jump over here and do it. So we can visualize if we have orders that are coming in through Salesforce, perhaps those are hitting integration suite. We can look at, success rate, failures, response time of integration suite, but then also what does that mean to the business? So that whole order to cash process business flow that we've got, we can extract those metrics and present them in a usable format for the business. So this really goes beyond just, performance metrics, security, but we can also provide an impact to the business.
Ben, do you see maybe, the SREs or engineers running SAP, like in the same way we're talking about monitoring and leveraging the native tools? Do you see any ability, right, for those teams to have that kind of capability to monitor business processes, leveraging native tools?
So they can, I can tell you because I was
Sure.
certified in solution manager that it's 100% possible, but it's extremely difficult.
Okay.
SAP requires you to build out these giant NAT charts for each business process. And that's gotten a little bit easier with Cloud ALM and that the fact that they're using Tricentis for that. But it still doesn't give you the granularity of the detail that you can get with PowerConnect. Again, because we aren't just measuring KPIs, but we're pulling full data, full fidelity data from the platform. We can do things like message payload inspection. So all of the IDOCs, any message that comes in through integration suite. And that gives us the ability to find out exactly why the error occurred and get those messages routed to the correct person immediately.
Makes sense. Let me add on to that question. Can business processes be created with SAP native tools that expand outside of the SAP application suite? i.e. a
Ah,
business process that starts with maybe a Java app or a website. It's certain user interactions that then goes all the way through product delivery on the back end. And sure, SAP apps are sprinkled in the middle, but a business process is going to transcend across multiple technologies.
great leading question, Taylor. The answer is absolutely not. So that's the problem, right? Is SAP's monitoring tools are very siloed. It keeps
Yep,
you just focused on what's happening inside of SAP, and everything outside of it, again, you're having to point the finger and get somebody else to look at it.
makes sense. So what Ben's showing too is going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation of Dynatrace as an observability platform is far more than just traditional APM, right? Business observability is an offshoot of traditional observability, but is a core functionality of Dynatrace. Your traces, metrics, logs, all the data that you are already collecting for those traditional observability use cases have a extremely valuable business context within the payload of those transactions. The business process monitoring, the business flow application that Ben was showing there for you is your ability in Dynatrace to create a process and understand the health of that process as it relates to business KPIs, but also the underlying technology. Again, because all of that data is in context. We know that, say, the start of an order to cash flow starts somewhere, maybe on the Apache front end. And if there is a deviation away from the success of that first business node actually being processed, there's likely a very technical underlying reason as to why that is happening. So the business flow itself can be affected, but we're going to show you why that's affected in the technology within all the native things that we're already doing within Dynatrace too. So the business flow example we're talking about there is linked to everything else we're doing, right? It's not its own just offshoot entity within Dynatrace. It's linked to all the other data and technology that's in there so that we have immediate understanding of how business flows are affected by technology outages and vice versa.
Yep, that's a great point. And I see we had another question from Matt about whether or not this solution was positioned as a replacement of Solution Manager. I think many of the people that are, SAP folks on the call are well aware that Solution Manager is reaching end of life in 2027. And so Cloud ALM is the replacement that SAP is offering for Solution Manager. I would argue that when it comes to all of the monitoring that you have to do for your SAP landscape, or excuse me for saying monitoring, observability, 100% we are a replacement for that. You will still need things like Cloud ALM for lifecycle management of SAP, right? So when it comes to downloading support packages and patching the system, you'll still need Cloud ALM or Solution Manager for that. But when it comes to monitoring, 100%, I would say that this solution can replace all of those. So one last thing I'll show, unless there are any other questions. Like I said, customers come to us oftentimes specifically for security, especially for things like the cloud. SAP cloud products, SAP only keeps those logs around for 30 days. They're very difficult to read, hard to make any sense of, no automated alerts. In addition to ingesting Splunk, in addition to ingesting SAP Cloud BTP logs, we're also sending all of the SAP security metrics. So security teams can use us for security audit, look for things like open clients, ensuring that corporate password policies are adhered to, et cetera. Oh, we got one more question. It says, how are Dynatrace and RHONDOS working together to price this to be to a client in a way that is not cost prohibitive?
So I think we could probably both answer that one a little bit, Ben, right?
Yeah.
On the PowerConnect side, I'll let you kind of dive into this a little bit, right? The actual license model is per SAP applications that we're going to monitor, right? It's not an all or nothing, right? Of course, you don't have every single solution potentially in SAP. So on the PowerConnect side, it's based off of what solutions are going to be monitored. And then on the Dynatrace side, it's just a portion of your platform subscription, right? So the way the Dynatrace license works is a broad consumption model, gives you access to the entirety of the platform. for everything, right? So for full stack monitoring with one agents to custom ingest of open telemetry traces to Visib ingest, all of it, right? It's all part of the Dynatrace consumption model. PowerConnect, we showed it really quickly, right? If you caught it, as we were showing in the tracing examples that Ben had up on his screen, PowerConnect sends us data in the open telemetry format, right? So it's a widely understood and supported format from the W3C community. That open telemetry tracing is a native part of the Dynatrace platform subscription, right? So on our side, you don't have to add more commit to your spend to get this in place. It's just part of the overall consumption model. And there's nothing we need to do on the Dynatrace side for you to get this integrated. But Ben, if you want to add anything more on the PowerConnect side that I talked about, right, that's simple
Yeah,
in terms
no,
of.
you nailed it, right? So we charge per production SID. So you get all of your pre-production systems included with your paid production license. And as Taylor mentioned, on the Dynatrace side, it is based on an ingestion model. But we do provide out-of-the-box dashboards to help you regulate that level of ingest. So we work with you to figure out what business cases are most important to you to implement. And then we can also show you visualizations like this in terms of like which extractors are sending the most data. So if there are data sets that you don't need, we can simply turn extractors on or off. Of those 300 extractors that we deliver out of the box, all of those are completely tunable. So we can turn them on or off based on the use cases that you're looking to implement. And in addition to that, we can also do things like filter. So if there are specific columns, perhaps that have personal information, and then we can exclude those from data that's being sent to Dynatrace. When it comes to like IDOC messages or messages from PI, we can eliminate sending the payloads to help reduce ingestion. So there's a lot of ways that we can work with customers to help keep their costs at a reasonable level. All right. Maybe give another minute for other questions. Otherwise, I don't know that I've got more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, I could always show more examples of the platform just to fill the time if need be, right? But I'd want to make it, related to some of the questions that people ask. I
Well, and
guess.
I think I'm like you, right? Like I would love to have customers with specific questions or scenarios reach out for a personal demo.
Mhm, exactly. Hopefully, one of the things that has been, or I guess one of the themes that has been clear, right, around why not just why monitor SAP with PowerConnect, but also why use it in the context of Dynatrace. In the Dynatrace world, this is a data source. It is linked to everything else you're already monitoring, right? So your SAP applications can be, but likely aren't in their own silo, right? You're going to have other third-party integrations talking to and talking from or receiving communications from SAP applications. Dynatrace is going to do that end-to-end linkage, right? One of the things we weren't able to show because we have a couple of different environments there is how those external integrations or external applications communicating with SAP specifically show horizontal relationships. But you saw that in the way our service trees work. So one of the things you just don't have today, monitoring SAP, especially without a unified observability platform, is that ability to tie all of that data in SAP to the data outside of SAP, as well as potentially all the siloed monitoring applications within SAP itself, right? We treat it as part of the overall Dynatrace ecosystem. It fits squarely in our entity model because the data coming out of PowerConnect is in the open telemetry format. And when it comes to turning it on and getting immediate value out of the platform, going all the way back to the initial graphic with Dynatrace Intelligence, baselining happens the moment the first metric comes into Dynatrace. Problem detection starts right away. Immediate usage of the platform happens the moment we start bringing data into it, and that includes any other integrated or third-party system with SAP as well.
Yeah. So, hey, Taylor, I told customers that we deliver a bunch of out-of-the-box dashboards, but what if, they've sunk their teeth into those, they've gotten used to them, but they decided they want to create their own custom view. Is that something they can do in Dynatrace?
Well, I'll answer that by saying you were showing a custom view, right? When we were going through this, right? So one of the dashboards that you were showing, especially, I think the example had like the print servers on it and the LDAP metrics. That's a custom dashboard. So kind of going back again to my graphic, by having all of the data in that producer column and that unified backend that is the Dynatrace Grail backend, everything is queryable. So your spans, your logs, your metrics, your business events, your custom events, your OTLP data, your SAP data, all of it is queryable and linkable within individual queries. There's a Dynatrace query language that we have aptly called DQL to create custom views, to create custom queries, to create custom alerts on whatever data set you need. So that view, if you go back and remember what Ben was showing, that dashboard that had a bunch of panels on it, that is a custom view, right? You can visualize the data however you want to for your unique use cases.
So I'll be honest, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but coming from the SAP world and jumping into Dynatrace, when I first saw DQL, I was a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Scared, right? Like a little apprehension,
Sure.
like, oh, how am I going to learn this? Is there a way inside of Dynatrace that I can help generate DQL to create these panels without having to know DQL?
Great question. So the example you showed in the problem cardboard said, explain this problem here. Why don't I just show my screen and answer that question? Because we could talk about it or I could show it.
While you're pulling it up, Sarah said that a customer had asked about customer use cases that we can share. I know out on the RHONDOS website, there are actual customer validated use cases on our website. So feel free to go there. Or like I said, we're happy to set up a call and we can put you in touch with one of our customers.
Yep. Likewise, on the Dynatrace side, we have a single public facing customer that's on our website that leverages the solution. It's Coca-Cola. So a very large enterprise that leverages the solution, but you can learn about that use case on our website as well. To Ben's point, we can have more one-off conversations with other customers as need be, but both of our websites have customer examples.
All right,
So
DQL automation for us.
yeah, I was loading up a business flow as well that actually had some data in it too, right? If we were going to actually show what that looked like. So we have our own, say, order to cash flow in Dynatrace in our demo environment. You can see things like the revenue KPI, any errors, and the duration to complete the flow, just in case we wanted to see some of that data that's actually running in it. But wherever you are in the Dynatrace environment, whether you're creating a dashboard, whether you're creating a notebook, custom query, whatever, there's also this lovely little button. I'll expand this out over here called Assist. So when Ben clicked on Explain Problem, you're actually in the context of Dynatrace Assist, where you're actually talking to all of the Dynatrace agents that comprise Dynatrace Intelligence. So if I want to ask a question of what are, as an example, top 10, 20, sir. So this is by error rate in the last 24 hours. As an example, you'll see the agents start to go to work and creating, in this case, a DQL query for me. So I'm going to ask a very simple human-based question to start getting answers out of my data that is translated from the human language. So I asked it, what are my top 20 services by error rate in the last 24 hours? It creates the DQL query for me. And in this case, also in Assist, it's going to spit out the response for me. But in the case of actually building that query, I can copy and paste this thing into a dashboard if need be, or ask this question in the context of the Dynatrace dashboard application and create panels this way. So DQL itself might, it's very similar to other query languages, if you will, in the observability space. But if there's a learning curve that comes with it, if it's new to you, just ask it in plain English what you're trying to do, and it'll create the query for you.
That's fantastic. I can tell you coming from SAP, writing query languages other than like SQL was very foreign to me. So this definitely helps with a level of comfort and know that I'm reducing the time spent to get the solution implemented and make it useful for me.
Fair enough. Makes total sense. I know Sarah mentioned at the beginning, I got about 15 years of experience in observability. Nearly a decade of that is in Splunk. The learning curve going from SPL to DQL, I was comfortable day one, right? For anybody that's kind of questioning about it, it's the same style of top-down query format. You know, the actual commands are a little bit different, but the move over from SPL to DQL was extremely easy. So anyone familiar with Splunk can quickly pick up DQL.
That's fantastic. Well, I know we're at about time. Sarah, I don't know if you've got our one final slide up there that you wanted to show.
Perfect. Yeah. Um, If there aren't any more questions, thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us today. I hope that you walked away learning something new about the way that we work with Dynatrace. I'll make sure to include my email, Ben's email, and also Taylor's email in the follow-up email that I'll send to you with the recording. Also, feel free to scan this QR code if you'd like a more personalized demo. We're more than happy to connect with you at any point. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.